is Saturday, September 2nd, 9:14 a.m. in Maui, Hawaii, and we're hitting you guys with the T in transits. So first we're going to start off with the sun. This is where, again, like 70% of our neutrinos come from. And we are at gate 40, which is deliverance, aloneness, which is the point of translation or transition between struggle and liberation, which I know this gate, again, being in the heart, reaching down towards the solar plexus, this is really, it's like the will to provide, right? And so with the will to provide, again, there's this shore between struggle and liberation. And so we're in the fifth line, which is rigidity, which is, I think, are we in a detriment of this one? I think 40? I was reading that. Yeah, so we're in the detriment.
The detriment.
Swoop. Just gotta verify here. Yeah, so we're in the detriment of this one. So this is a tendency in revolution to accept a certain amount of necessary deviation on the assumption that it can be successfully purged later, which is the weakness of the ego in its loneliness to maintain and to not reject negative relationships. So it's the unwillingness to reject negative relationships.
Yeah, not willing to cut ties on those people. That's like, I know this ain't good for me, but I'm just gonna keep playing it out because you have tea.
I was like, that's gonna be a strong brew.
Nope. I got you.
Thanks, dog. So what happens when we have the detriment ultimately is that we're really just experiencing the detriment. So the exaltation would be the power of the ego is maintained in the rejection of negative relationships. And so the energy today is going to be one where you might be aware of these negative relationships in your life, but you won't necessarily have the energy to reject them. And so, again, that being a transit, it doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to follow the transits, right? Like these are programming neutrinos for the new life that are establishing their circuitry. And so for us, it's kind of like energetic weather. And the key is, again, not to accept or reject the transits outright. Mm-hmm. It's to entertain them while maintaining connection with your own strategy and authority. So again, for instance, if you get the gut hit to hang on to a relationship, right? But the transit is saying the weakness of the ego is to maintain negative relationships. You might look at that and be like, oh, so I'm supposed to maintain this relationship. But it's like, that's the transit. Follow your gut. Again, if you have your sacral authority. Same thing with all the other types. It's really important to always come back to the foundation of human design, which is strategy and authority, which is the hierarchy and the dynamics of auras and interrelating in that way. So that's rigidity, and that's in detriment. So that's going to be the primary focus of what we're feeling today. So Luke is going to now read us the I Ching.
Ching, baby. Okay. So 6 in the 5th place, right? The 5th? Yeah.
5th place, yeah.
If only the superior man can deliver himself, it brings good fortune. Thus he proves to inferior men that he is in earnest. Times of deliverance demand inner resolve. Inferior people cannot be driven off by prohibitions or any external means. If one desires to be rid of them, he must first break completely with them in his own mind. They will see for themselves that he is in earnest and will withdraw. Yeah, it's just knowing when to remove yourself. Like talking about in the detriment, it's the opposite. It's like, all right, this situation is no longer serving me. These people I don't feel like I'm connecting with anymore. There's just like a disagreement. Let me pull back and not be a part of that relationship anymore.
Right. Yeah, and it's a lot of the times too. It's right. That's the outer authority or the mind can make up or rationalize to the self and convince the self that to maintain a relationship, even if it's negative, is fruitful in some way or will have some kind of payoff. Is, again, that's the outer authority. That's the mind that is looking to conform and condition you and homogenize you, which it has its place within life, but it's not in the driver's seat. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, they have their mind in the driver's seat, rather than their sacral or their spleen or the moon. Like for us reflectors, we have the moon in the driver's seat in a lot of ways. So it's important to remember to constantly check in with who's actually driving the vehicle, because if you just let the mind drive, it's always going to take the safe route. It's always going to take the route that's most acceptable by others, and you're always going to end up last, and you're probably not going to end up at the destination that you actually want to end up at. So to say the trip about this relationship is like family making that much harder to reject. Yeah, like family is hard to reject. And there's also ways of going about, I would say, in terms of family, is, without necessarily rejecting them, but to just really
wedge.
What's that?
Put a wedge or distance yourself.
Yeah, create some distance.
Healthy distance.
Healthy distance, yeah.
I moved to Maui.
Right. You moved to Maui. I love my family. They're so amazing. And there was a point where I got to the point I was like, I can't live with these people anymore. Like, I love them so much, and because of that, they have me like their mental authority, because I'm so open, had me in a cast or a form that wasn't necessarily congruent with my my internals.
Dragon, everybody wants to move to Maui.
Everyone wants to move to Maui. It's like, it's funny because
she's if it's right for you or not.
Yeah, that's one thing that's cool about the Aina is like, people move to Maui all the time, and they're either spit out or they're like completely embraced. And so definitely there's that
the respect,
wanting to be respectful about it. Yeah, exactly. Kuleana. No.
Yeah. I would also just say, it's always worthwhile to try to come here and see what it's like, see what your experience is like.
Totally.
And then from there, you'll know whether or not you're supposed to be here. Yeah. And also, Angel, that's a really good point. I feel especially with the fourth line / tribal energy, you want to hang on to the last straw. Yeah, it's like, can I get as many opportunities out of this as possible? And then it's until it's like, wow, these opportunities are fucking kicking my ass, and it's no fun anymore.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's like you could there could be 100,000 last straws. Again, that's kind of one of those mental fuckeries. Is like you could invent a last straw for everyone, and so again, the invitation today is to let this be the actual last straw. And the beauty about it is, again, you could always invent another last straw. So if you do decide to sever a relationship, although people may put these like, oh, you cut this cord, then there's never going to be, we'll never be connected again. It's like, yeah, cool. I'm not doing this because the connection, I don't want this connection. And that's one thing about sacrifice, right? Is that we give something up of a lesser value so that we can receive something of a greater value. And especially as a third line, I know sometimes you got to break the bond in order to make space for a better bond or a greater bond to form. So everyone's all like, let's go to Maui.
Be ready to work.
I wish I had, honestly, I swear, if I had a property, that would be legit one of my things. I would just I would have a bunch of little houses that people could rent out and y'all could come visit. I don't have a property quite yet, but I'd say in the next probably 2 years. Yeah, I'm seeing like a year or two, something's gonna happen. Yeah, the Kung Fu studio will be there, and it'll be in there. So let's see. Yeah, so this is also a big part of the global frequency we're going through right now with the cross of planning. Yep, it's currently in line 1, but yeah, there's this strong pull to keep the family or the tribe together at all costs. Yeah, so that's the again, realizing like we're born into families, but we're not necessarily supposed to operate within the context of those families at optimum levels. And that's where, they say you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. I think someone says that. I read that somewhere. Yeah, that sounds like a saying, right? Okay, great. So, one of those things is like, you guys choosing to be in here, you're choosing friends in here. You're choosing people with our that are, again, more aligned with your natural frequency as opposed to the people that have already been chosen. And then also a lot of the times it's like, again, you got to accept that the people that you chose before coming into this life, whether you believe that or not, are here to create the adequate amount of pressure and trauma and conditioning so that ultimately the value of being able to choose the people that you spend time with. And that's one thing that's really important is like, with human design, it takes 7 years to decondition yourself and your body. And it's because it takes 7 years for the body to go through this cycle of cells replacing cells and cells on cells and new flesh and new organs and new matter, right? And so the idea is that while it takes the mind 18 months to go through this process, like if you break up with someone, if you date someone within that 18 months, they're probably going to be the same person because your mind has yet to let go of that frequency of that person. Not always to say that, but it's very common. I see that a lot. People don't give themselves ample time after separations to like manifest a new partner, and then they end up manifesting and attracting the same partner. So it's important to note that with the body moves slower, right? And so 7 years is the again the amount of time that it takes to say that you're like fully conditioned, which I've been doing human design for like 8 years now. So I could say that I'm fully conditioned, but also I've really just conditioned myself to a design or a behavior or a lifestyle that is more in alignment with my human design. So there's a whole nother 7 years of deconditioning that of what I think my human design is and what I think I'm supposed to act like and what the moon tells me to act like to get another layer deeper. And that's beautiful because the work is like really never done. So yeah, conditioning in your born family can indicate that's not you exactly. Sometimes you end up confronting, but it can be definitely a catalyst for you to differentiate. Yeah, big time. And that's one thing I'm really huge on is like, I don't care if you know where you want to go. If you're unwilling to accept where you're at, nobody can help you, right? Nobody can help you because you might think that, oh yeah, I want to go in that direction. But if you don't know where you're at, you might end up walking in that direction for 10 years and be like, oh, finally you realize where you're at and you're like, damn, I was actually closer to where I wanted to be 10 years ago, but I didn't accept where I was at. So it's so important to accept where you're at, to understand what your conditioning actually is. And then that is where, an app like Neutrino Design is helpful, taking your mom and dad's charts or your brother's charts or your past partners and running composites to see how did this person affect me in ways like that. It's a deeper part of the work. And yeah, it's very third line energy for sure. And I did that quite a bit, like attaching myself to different organizations and different people's work. This is actually one of the first times that I've accepted that I'm going to be at the center of something with human design and evolve. And it's been so much more natural, and the support has been so much more natural, and it's amazing. So what does accepting where you are look and feel like to y'all?
For me,
go ahead.
Yeah, when I'm in an emotional wave, since I'm an emotional being, just take on the emotion rather than like trying to figure out a way to like subdue the emotion. Be like, oh, I feel like crap today, I'm gonna go do this thing so that I feel better. It's like, no, I'm gonna lay here or sit here and feel that emotion until it like starts to feel better, or at least until it like cools off itself. So that's one way.
That's yeah, for sure. That's good for the emotional authority. I would say personally, because I'm like the opposite. Luke is fully defined. I'm fully undefined. And one of the ways that I look at or I feel into, for me, accepting myself is, it's really along the lines of like, how many seeds have I been planting, and am I am I watering the ones that are actually important for me? And so really it looks like my activity. Like for instance, Luke had to go, I forget what you had to go do yesterday, but you're like something. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I want to cruise. I want to roll. And meanwhile, like my partner was kind of needing some space. And so for me, it's just like I don't feel like I'm running away from anything. Right. And I feel like I'm running towards things, because there's another saying that was like, are you a gazelle or are you a lion? Because the gazelle only runs when it's in danger, but the lion runs to hunt, to feed its family. And so for me, the whole family element has really, because that was not necessarily where I thought I was going to go with my life. I thought I was going to go be this like sexy DJ traveling around, fucking, going to festivals and doing all this healing work. And now I'm looking back at that, and life kind of was like, no, you're going to be a dad. And in accepting that has matured me so much, that has created so much abundance for me. It's created so much fulfillment for me, to the point where I just like literally most of the times when I sit down and I get through, because like when I sit down to meditate, it's always like oh, I'm going to do this thing for Evolve, or I'm going to do this thing for Life Tenders, or like I have to go through kind of like the like purge the aura of everybody else's stuff that I'm connected to. But then once I get to myself, there's this like ground floor of just like, holy shit, I'm so grateful and I appreciate, the tension that's between me and my partner right now, because I know that's temporary, because it always brings us closer together. And that's one thing that it's like, tension, they talk about in spirituality and especially yoga, to like release all of the tension.
Cocoa Bones.
Is thank you. Is yeah, if you go on my website, there's a SoundCloud link and a Spotify link as well. But so if you release all the tension in your body, though, it's like you're completely dead. And so it's really about tensegrity. It's about having that tension appropriately dialed in the body. And so that's another thing that for me helps me know that I like feel like I'm accepting where I'm at, is like when I can feel my body, like when I can walk around and I'm not like trying to escape pain is another thing, because there's definitely like a lot of pain, especially like sitting in the chair and working on the computer or being on the smartphone a lot. There's like a lot of pain and tension. And so again, it's about accepting the tension and knowing that, okay, my judgment or my discernment is that there's too much tension in these areas. And so what do I do? Instead of trying to release tension in the back, right? What I can do is just strengthen tension in the opposing muscles. And then that brings everything into alignment, right? It's kind of like how a snake moves. Because if you keep paddling on one side, or a canoe, you keep paddling on one side, you just go in circles, right? And so it's acknowledging, oh, I'm paddling too much on one side, so let me paddle on the other side. My DJ name is Cocoa Bones.
If you want the
all
real
one
juice,
word.
though, you gotta go find them on site.
Yeah, so
That's
on
where they
I'm
got
pretty
good
sure
juices.
my website still works. ReikiMarco.com. There's a little like links to the top, on the top right. One of them is a SoundCloud link, and I have mixes and stuff up there.
Yeah, I feel that same way. Like you're talking about on the DJ path, be that sexy DJ. There's a part of me that I was like, damn, I'm gonna be this super vocalist and like this hard band. We would have met paths eventually at some point.
Yeah,
anyway.
right. I think so.
But this one's good.
Yeah, and that's one thing too, is it's like it's so much more wholesome, and there's this like sweeping kind of, and I would say it's the dark side of differentiation, of like wanting to be special, and seeing certain people that are special or perceived as special, celebrities and stuff like that, and allowing that projection to feed what skills I choose to master, what relationships I choose to foster. Because so much of it has just been like taking a step back and actually almost just like pushing everything away and being like, hold on a second. If I just let everything burn, what is going to remain? And I actually had a mushroom journey where I did that. And I was like shaking and freaking out and watching all these like versions of myself just like in the fire dancing and being turned into ash. Because the idea is that, when you burn away everything, the thing that cannot burn is you. And that's so much of what we're doing here with the fire of the awareness. Like the transits is part of that fire, is the pumping of the flame and the heating up of the metal, to ultimately, when you heat up metal, it draws the impurities out to the surface. So anyway, yeah, to be the phoenix, you have to burn to the ash. Yeah. And I feel like when wholesome becomes something you appreciate, something is beginning to click big time. And then Jordan Peterson also was like, people don't mature unless they actually have something that means more than them. And for me, that was my daughter. And that was the thing that she meant more to me than I meant to myself. And because of that, it's a contrast, because of that, I started taking better care of myself. I started to make decisions for the long term and for the legacy, because I want her to have a better life, not because I want to be able to get more, but because I want to be able to be at a capacity where I could give more. And so, yeah, this gate 40, again, I'm coming into a deeper appreciation of the heart center and the will. Understanding this gate 40, because, even though I'm pretty deep into the human design world, there's always these layers that will get peeled back like an onion, where I'm like, oh, this is the heart of the heart, or like this is the core of the heart. And yeah, this whole deliverance and aloneness has been huge. And I actually just had like 2-3 weeks of aloneness because Luke, who lives with me and we spend every day together, he was gone for like 2.5 weeks. And so I got to actually experience that. And then now looking at this gate, I'm realizing like, oh, yes, more recuperation. There was a lot of that, more resoluteness, more humility as online. I'm more organized. There is a little bit more, how you say, rigidity in the things that I will entertain or connections that I will entertain. And then ultimately line 6, which is tomorrow, is decapitation, which is like the full cut, which is really looking at like, hey, who is out here that I'm blaming for my lack of aloneness, or who am I blaming for my loneliness, right? Where am I not accepting where I'm at and taking responsibility for my own actions? And so, see, Dragon says, I'm still working on getting to that core. I've gotten closer over these last few years, right? Like that's the one thing too, is it's like a cage, right? When you break out of the matrix, you're like, this is the real world, only to figure out that it's another matrix. And one thing that's beautiful is there's a threshold, right, of like breaking out of the matrix and having this joy and this bliss of like, I freed myself from the matrix. It's beautiful. Like, this is real life. And then eventually you start to realize you come up against the barriers of this new ego or this new wall that you're in. And you're like, oh, damn it, I'm still in the matrix. And so how can we hold that awareness that when we break out of the matrix, that there's another matrix that's holding us, right? Without necessarily robbing ourselves of the joy and the pride that is deserved of people who do free themselves from their conditioning. Like I was saying, is like you're going from one conditioning to another conditioning with human design. However, this new conditioning serves you better and it serves the world better. And so, of course, yes, it's another conditioning. It's not another like belief system. And ultimately, the idea is that in breaking out of one conditioning and going into another, again, you'll start to be less surprised that that's what's happening. Right. And so what that does is that creates a pacing that is how you say, more natural, as opposed to this like, I got to break out of this one. Yes, I'm finally free. Oh, no, it's like catastrophic, which again, that's just me. Maybe emotional people feel different, but
slightly. Slightly. It's like two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Same, but different.
You have anything to say? No?
I was looking at this word wholesome, and that word is like kind of always felt like an oxymoron to me, because it's like wholesome, sum of the whole. It's
Right.
not really like really giving all of you. But then I was thinking more on that. It's like, we're never really giving all of ourselves. We're not doing the whole. It's always some of what we are. So I actually really like that word. Now I'm starting to think about it more right now. That just kind of popped into my head when I was looking at it. And I was like, that's cool. Yeah, okay. Because I kind of judged the word at first, like wholesome. You're only giving some of me, like fuck that. You can give you all. Oh wait, hold on. I can't give all the time.
Because hindsight, it's like, I could have done better.
Yeah.
You can always see how you've done, and that's, the mind is good in that ways of being able to analyze of like, how can I improve and blah blah blah. But what was it? Is that there's a riddle that says, what gets larger the more you take out of it?
Heard this and I don't know the answer.
You've said it like 3 times.
I did. Whole.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh yes.
Whole gets larger when you take some of the whole.
Yeah. So again, there's the acceptance of like, again, not accepting, not rejecting, but allowing something to be, which is like same thing with the emotions. I don't accept emotions immediately out the gates and identify with them. I also don't reject them out the gates and like, oh, I don't want to identify with that. I'm just with the emotions. Right. I allow it to be alive, like relationships. I don't have a relationship. Like, my mind wants to put it in this nice box and define it and make all the borders, but God doesn't build in straight lines. As they say, it's a relating. It's something that's alive. So if she deviates or I deviate from a path, right, that is expected within our relationship, how much threshold of deviation do I allow myself before I start freaking out? Right. And that's the key, is like with Reiki training, when I train people, there's this, flip side of the coin of like, oh, it's working. My hands are on fire. I can see visions. And then the other side of the coin is like, oh, I don't know if it's working. I can't feel anything. And, oh, this person looks like they're in pain. And, oh, I'm feeling shit. And the key to like successful practitioner or an effective practitioner is the ability not to judge those as a final diagnosis of how well the session worked. Because I've had sessions where I don't feel shit, right? I don't feel nothing, and then the person wakes up and is like, "Oh my god, I had all these realizations." I was like, "Really?" Okay, because I was not having any spiritual experiences at all. I was judging myself, and I was feeling bad about myself, and I was feeling bad that like you came here to work with me and blah blah blah. And so
maybe that was exactly the medicine they needed.
exactly,
Because they were probably feeling those things, and you're transmuting it through your session.
exactly,
Right?
yeah, and like maybe it's so it's there's that question is like maybe.
Right.
Maybe, right? It's like, oh, a man falls and breaks his foot. Bad. Maybe. Because he breaks his foot, he can't be contracted into the army and he doesn't go and die. Good. Maybe. Because he doesn't go into the army, he can't meet the love that he likes. Bad. Maybe. Right? So it's just like this again, there's so much, and even with human design, like we're talking about like definition and differentiation, but it's also it's kind of more like you got to learn the rules to break the rules, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're doing over here. But I mean, that's what I'm doing over here. I'm the fucking heretic. So anyway,
Curious Dragon, are you an emotional authority or no?
Let's find out.
Oh yeah, you can click.
We got tags, bro.
Easy.
Nope.
No sacral. That's probably why you're judging with your emotions, because they're not necessarily always yours. You're feeling other people's emotions. So you're like, why the hell am I feeling this right now?
Yeah.
So the good thing to do is to take the time to like separate yourself from others and be like, okay, what actually is mine and what's not mine?
Yeah. And a big thing too is like what I've learned is when I surrender to other people's emotions in a way of like, oh, I'm feeling this, I picked this up from so and so. I can't take that on. Like my mind tries to resist it, and if whatever you resist persists. And one thing that I've learned to do is just surrender to the sadness that I've picked up from somebody else. And when I do that, it's like and then it's gone. You know what I mean? Like it's not as big or as scary or as much as a conflict as my undefined and conditioned solar plexus wants to make it. And so, and then once I do that, I'm less resentful of the person, because it's usually projection is out of ignorance. It's very rare that you find someone who's like maliciously projecting and manipulating consciously. Most of the time it's out of ignorance. And so that's where a lot of my empathy comes from in doing so much Reiki and transmuting a lot of people's emotions, realizing again that it's like, if I just like become like a black hole and just suck everything into me, well, then nothing really sticks. Or if I chill myself out, and this is what they do with metals, is they'll cool copper down, or they'll cool their conductors down, because when you have something that is like at a sub-zero temperature, there's no loss of current in that. And so that's what I do with the emotional centers. If I'm like feeling something, instead of resisting it, I kind of do, is that judo, or they use the enemy's momentum against themselves? Tai Chi. So I think they do that in judo too, right?
They got it.
Yeah, judo and aikido. There you go. That's what I was thinking of. Where they like, they'll push against you, and then the master will fall out, and then the person pushing will just fall over on themselves. And so that's one of my techniques with, originally, you're right.
I'm just fucking around. Just gotta feed off that heretic.
I love it. Right. And so that's the thing, is like the open centers, they can become beautiful playgrounds if you realize like it's just children on a playground, as opposed to the prison cell of needing to identify or needing to not identify. Just let that be. And also like be aware of your judgment. And then, exploration around like, why is it that I judge this? Why do I not want to appear like this person? Because it's always usually like, oh, I know this. I know a person who's like this, and I don't want to be like that person. Well, why not? Because maybe you are. And that's how you keep it under the surface of your awareness, by rejecting all of the qualities in other people that have that. You do that to keep the quality within yourself that you don't like hidden. You know what I mean? And I'm speaking from experience. Like, yeah.
That's all you get.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to gate 30. Oh, did you read the I Ching?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's move down to Earth. So gate 37, the family, friendship, the manifestation, micro and macro cosmically, of the organic nature of ceremonies. In the book, it says macro and microcosmically, but I think probably almost every time I've said micro first and then macro. which is so funny. My brain is just, that's another thing. I'm like realizing I'm a little bit dyslexic, and I could see that as a problem and self-diagnose myself as like neurodivergent or ADHD or any of these things. But really, it's just like, oh, if that's just how my brain picks it up, then cool. Am I going to like reject that and think that there's something wrong with me and create a problem where there's not really a problem? It's just another layer of awareness that I get to sift through, and notice that I have to sift through it, but I get to sift through it. Because also it's like, I believe that God never gives us anything that we can't handle or that is going to entirely destroy us. What's that saying? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Live a little longer. Something about that. Okay, fifth line. Love, natural and unaffected devotion to the family. Exaltation is natural harmony and perfected sharing. Natural harmony and sharing possible through friendship. Detriment is emotional dependency that often turns love into hatred. The possibility of dependency of turning love into hate. I've been feeling that one scratch at me quite a bit. The possibility of dependency turning love into hate, right? Because there's like in a family, Emerald depends on me to pay the rent and get food and do all these things, and I depend on her to like raise the baby and also like love me. And that's one I would say is just like being fully transparent. I'm like, I can never get enough affection, and so there's part of me that's like, oh, is there something wrong with our relationship? Again, relationship. And then it's like in the relating, like, no, there's times when I'm not going to get the affection that I want. And then there's times when maybe I'm getting too much affection. And so too much affection, or I suppose like, oh, she wants to spend more time with me, but I have to work. And so it's just been again, there, it says right in the exaltation, it's the natural harmony, and then goes into sharing that's possible through friendship. So realizing that, in terms of family, that it's like, while we are family, like we're also friends, and with friends, you have to accept the friends for who they are. Caroline, you're out. Or Carlene, thank you so much for joining. That was awesome to have you. Hope to see you again. I do feel the same. I think my dyslexia is funny, right? And so it's like I can just laugh at it. I laugh at them like, oh, ha, 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 and I can call myself out on it rather than my undefined mind being like, oh, you have to convince people that you're certain about what you're talking about. I don't do that anymore. I used to do that a lot. That was my struggle with like not being a 6-line. And even if I was a 6-line, I'd still be in the, first pre-Saturn return phase of my life. So I wouldn't necessarily even be able to embody that. Which really the only true teacher is time.
Bye, Seba.
Bye, Seba. Thank you guys for joining. And yeah, the bargain is all up in that thinking. And so again, not turning the mind off, but now I apply my mind to stuff that exhausts it so that I can like that was a weird text. Did you see that?
No.
Someone's just asking me to dinner. I'm like, who would dare be asking me to dinner right now? Probably one of my bros. Who is that? I'm okay. No.
Read the I Ching here while you do that. So 9 in the 5th place means, as a king, he approaches his family. Fear not, good fortune. A king is the symbol of a fatherly man who is richly endowed in mind. He does nothing to make himself feared. On the contrary, the whole family can trust him, because love governs their intercourse. His character of itself exercises the right influence. Good father.
Good father.
Good father.
Well, sometimes I let my mind convince me that my friends or my partners are my enemy, right? Rather than like my training partners. And sometimes they are the enemy, but sometimes they're the enemy to my not self and the enemy to my conditioning. And so coming back to that, like, oh, if I trust that this person just wants the best for me, again, how can I not accept or reject what's going on, but how can I just like actually entertain it and see what's actually there? It's like doing a puzzle, you do a puzzle because you want the puzzle making and solving puzzles. I am less of the latter. I like to see the finished result. I have I'm like this human design wise. So design arrows are right, personality arrows are left, and yeah, sometimes I get caught up in that, like wanting to be at the end result. Probably a lot of my open route is like that too. Like I just want the end result so that I don't have the pressure of needing to finish this again, rather than just learning how to enjoy the pressure and realizing that like I can enjoy the pressure, like as an open being.
Meanwhile, my defined route reaches for the coins, and you
Yeah.
feel the pressure for it.
Yeah, and then I reach out and I'm not sure. We don't have a set time for this. We go, but you do actually have to go somewhere.
I do.
Great. All right. Well,
my subtle root pressure.
Yeah,
I'm not throwing too hard. All right, eaching for the day. Let's see what we get. Let's toss these coins, baby. Oh, 1, 2, and under the T. Greater Yang.
All right. So for those of you that are new, that are still here, we're creating our own hexagram, just kind of like to guide ourselves for this day.
Yeah.
Greater Yin. And we're doing it using the coin method, which is throwing 3 coins.
Yin.
And constructing a hexagram based off math, which if you want to learn how to do that, the Sage channel is really good for that. There's some information in there.
There's some info. Just scroll back.
Yeah. Which you might have to assign yourself the role, but if you just scroll to the top of the server and where you can assign like your type and your profile and stuff, you'll be able to select a class like an RPG, and you'll get access to that channel. So we got some hidden Easter eggs in this server that at first I was like, oh no, are people not find it? And it's like, yeah, they're Easter eggs, dude. Like you hide them.
Exactly.
Like a video game.
Yeah. Last one was Yin.
Yeah.
Yin again.
All right. So it looks like we got
let's see here.
Splitting under splitting.
Is that it?
I think so. It's yang yin yin.
Yang yin yin.
Yang yin yin yang
thunder.
Yin, yin. That's thunder. Okay.
Thunder on thunder.
That's arousing. That's 51.
Is 51 the great arousing?
I have this.
I was just reading this because the moon is in 51.
Right.
When we were talking about like, I kind of don't know how I feel about doing the transits today. I was reading it. That's funny. I was like, maybe this isn't relevant. Oh, apparently it's fucking.
Let me know if you have gate 51.
I think I have 51.
I think
2551? Is that the channel?
Yeah, you have 2551.
I do have 51. You have 51, right?
I have 51.6, yeah. Which I'm going to go to it right now.
So, the judgment. Shock brings success. Shock comes. Oh, laughing words. Ha ha. The shock terrifies for 100 miles, and he does not let fall the sacrificial spoon and chalice. The shock that comes from the manifestation of God within the depths of the earth makes man afraid, but this fear of God is good, for joy and merriment can follow upon it. When a man has learned within his heart what fear and trembling means, he is safeguarded against any terror produced by outside influences. Let the thunder roll and spread terror 100 miles round. He remains so composed and reverent in spirit that the sacrificial rite is not interrupted. This is the spirit that must animate leaders and rulers of men, a profound inner seriousness from which all outer terrors glance off harmlessly. So this reminds me of, just training like enough. It's like doing the same thing over and over again. Afraid of it. Like no longer having stage fright.
Voluntary
like
exposure to fear.
Yeah. And then also sparring people over and over again so that when you get, especially like in Kung Fu for me, like sparring the masters that I train with over and over again, being like, oh, okay, well, if I can spar them, I can, fight whoever on the street and like feel confident and secure in what's happening and not get that. Like when I first started sparring, I get that like shaky, like too much adrenaline feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
Got anything to say?
I just thought of a side note. I've been offering when people ask like how to get their spleens, whether they're undefined or defined, in line. I'm always like, go like to a boxing gym or a Muay Thai gym and face.
Yeah.
It's just like that's one of the things that can, you know, get you out of your head and drop you into your spleen, because the spleen is right like self-preservation, and there's nothing quite like getting punched in the face to like ground you and turn you on.
It's fact.
Yeah, to turn your body on. But okay, so the changing lines, we have yin, yang, yin. That's
So it's the opposite. This would be yin, yang. Or no, sorry.
it's yin, yang, yin. So that's
Yin,
water,
yang, yeah.
water under thunder.
Thunder, which is yang, yin, right? Yeah. So gate 40, deliverance.
Oh wow! That's the one we're in.
Yeah, we're in 40. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just reading
Oh.
the image to myself
Okay.
real quick, see if there's anything. Nah.
Feeling of
much hit
wanting
that.
to box again. Yeah, especially with that 2838 channel, that's a huge one. But you know, again, just in terms of pressure being driven from the root up into the throat or up into the spleen, like one of the best things you can do is fight. You know, fight or run. You know, because what happens if a tiger jumps out? You run away from it. Cool. There's the activity. There's the technique to practice. What happens if the tiger catches up to you? Well, then you have to fight the tiger. So those are like kind of like the two activities of the spleen that have been demonized. You know, don't run away from your problems, and don't fight people. Don't be violent. Be nonviolent. It's like, dude, we're violent creatures.
Violence.
But the thing is, like, I'd rather fight a dude who has a relationship with violence than someone that has no relationship with violence, because the guy with no relationship with violence, he's on that like, oh, I just like see red and bodies start dropping. First of all, probably not, dude. But second of all, I don't know if you're gonna pull a gun out on me or a knife out on me because you have something to prove, right? And so it's important to have those relationships with running away from things or running towards things, and fighting things, right? As the spleen's ability, like you're only as good if you think about it energetically, right? In terms of the spleen cutting away stuff, it's like, how sharp is your blade, right? And how swiftly and how effortlessly does the blade feel like it's a part of your body, as opposed to it being like this, you know, needing a whole. And some people need a whole like big ceremony to cut cords. Eventually, you get to the point where it's just like, you know, it's like blowing dirt off. So,
yeah. Interesting too that both of these are in the heart. They go in different directions.
Yeah.
51
goes towards the G, 40 goes towards 37 in the solar plexus.
Yeah.
Wow. Self-preservation's put human in a very weird spot. Yeah, so fight or flight, right, is the response. Fight, flight, or freeze, right? And you know, ultimately as a human being, we have the ability to become that, to not fight, to not flight, to not freeze, but to actually be present. Because fight, flight, and freeze are all, again, extremes of the spleen. But the idea about the authority is to use the whatever authority that you have to harmonize the rest of the elements, rather than, that's why the emotional authority, you don't make decisions in the emotional, right? Because the emotional authority is taking on, it's like hijacking the entire system. So it's like, okay, just let this like do its thing, and then fawn has been added to people please. Oh yeah, exactly. Which is like, people freak out, you know, and it's like, you don't want to please them. Or sometimes people will just say stuff to me and I'll just stare at them and I'll just look at them and I watch them get like super, like, I think it happened yesterday with the guy was asking about like mushrooms and stuff like that. And I was just like,
rando.
I was just looking at him, you know, and I would be honest, if I was judging him, I wasn't judging him. I just was curious about like how he would judge himself or how he would judge me. And yeah, that was just a funny
interaction. That guy was hilarious.
Yeah,
he just kept popping up too.
Yeah, fawning works perfect for the transit today. Yeah. Fawning, that's cool. I've never heard of that one, but that definitely, I see that becoming more of a psychosis that people get trapped in, of fawning, especially as a way to like avoid confrontation or to avoid having to cut away something that's not good for them, which is not self of the solar plexus and not self of the spleen. Last cup of tea, you heading out? Yep, I'm prone to fawning for sure. I'm prone to fawning and flight.
I used to be prone to freezing, but now I'm like, let's put on the gloves.
Now you're more of a fighter, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm definitely more of a fighter now. Fight you. Oh,
Mhm.
damn.
Not for long.
I unfortunately have issues with fawning as well. Flight and freeze. Fight is only when my back is up against the wall. Lean and learn the temper of the bird. Yeah, so
Come
like,
trained kung fu.
yeah, exactly. Like Luke was saying, is like, go get in some fights, you
Yeah.
know, and not like out on the street because you don't know who you're fighting. But
Find a
Muay
place to train.
Thai, Jiu-Jitsu is great as well. Especially women excel at Jiu-Jitsu because a lot of guys just try and like muscle it, right? But women, they can like their ability to strategize is like so much better than men because men will just try to overpower, but the woman can bait. I've seen it so many times where just this like little girl will fight this big strong dude, and because she has technique and she can remain calm, yeah, she can use her brain, but more so she just like her body is trained to do it. So she's like, oh, he's putting a lot of energy here. Again, it's like that that Tai Chi concept of just falling out and letting the enemy's force be the thing that defeats them.
Exactly. They end up beating themselves.
Yeah, they end up beating themselves. So
Facts.
well, I hear my baby crying, and also I think I got some breakfast waiting for me. So
Shoot.
thank you guys. This is an awesome tea in transits. We're going to be closing this one out tomorrow. So if you haven't voted or put any nominations or checked out the this channel right here, no, not charts where I keep rearranging this Discord. It's in the extracurriculars. No, where? Oh, I know why. I don't have them. It's in extracurriculars, but it's the charts as or the gates as characters and whatnot.
Right.
Samurai, awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Salamander, big
Thank
love.
you. Love
Yeah,
you
it's so good.
guys.
This is so good to just come together and connect in this way. So
Come together.
thank you guys so much. We'll see you
now.
tomorrow.
You
Peace.
and me.